Hey everyone, and welcome to the second day here at Wimbledon 2025 of the main draw. Quality Shot Tennis coming at you with obviously the daily podcast. We're so glad to be here with you, and it's been another sort of upset ridden day. But before we get into anything, obviously this podcast is sponsored by Nick Revit Sports, so please check out their website in the description below for online racket demos and all things tennis equipment. Anthony, how have you found the second day here at Wimbledon so far?
Yeah, after upset. Continues on the trend of the first day. We had Coco just losing. This just happened in straight sets to Yemstremska, who had that run in Australia last year. She's shown that she can be a great ball striker on the court, but the loss for Coco is quite a disappointing one. Her being out in two sets, after having just won Roland Garros. I've never really found Gauff's game on grass to be pretty much, I would say, even near the level that I found her game on clay and hard court, to be honest. So from that front, I'm not as shocked as some people who are perhaps picking her to win the title. I didn't see that um, possibility very likely at all, but I definitely didn't expect this in the first round. And yeah, upset, also Sasha Zverev, and yeah, a lot of other upsets as well. Rinder Kanesh in 5 sets, impressive from him after a disappointing tiebreaker to get it done anyway in a fifth over Sasha.
Yeah, I mean, I just came out of the Zverev press conference, and he came in. The moderator, they usually start off with the first question saying, how are you feeling? Tough loss or great win. How are you feeling? Stuff like that. And she asked him that, and he said, "I have no thoughts. I have no thoughts." Like
Wow.
four words. I have no thoughts. And then she opened up the questions to the journalists, and everyone was just sort of like, they don't want to be the first question because
Yeah.
you don't know what mood he's in. Um, so I just said, okay, you know what, I'm going for it. I'm gonna be the first if I get eaten up by Sasha Zverev because I say so, because of his tough loss, so be it. But I went for it, and I asked him, what he thought really was a key driver today that resulted in the loss. Did he think he was being a bit suffocated maybe by Rinderknech coming into the net? And he was saying he felt he had the match in his own hands and it was his own fault that he lost. Rinderknech played well. He thinks he played the best he's ever played. He's never seen him play that well. I think that's a bit you know, bias from him because I've seen Rinderknech play extremely well before. Even, I saw him play at the US Open last year against Andrei Rublev, and that I was there in the crowd for the entire match. And I mean, he was playing it so well, and it was extremely hot conditions. Like, we think Wimbledon is hot these first few days. The US Open was, I wouldn't say 10 times hotter because mathematically it wasn't, but it definitely felt like it. Um, and yeah, so then he did open up a lot about mental health. He said he feels very lonely outside of tennis. He doesn't really know who he is outside of tennis, what he likes and stuff like that. And he finds that since Australia, he's really struggled with his mental health. He said he might have to look into therapy. It was a very eye opening discussion. He's been very very emotional in there, and it's good to see this side of him a little bit more because we usually just say, oh, these are tennis players, they've got the perfect life, and they come in, they play these tournaments, they win millions. Yes, everything's great, but I was thinking when he was answering to some of the questions, I was like, damn, like he has a lot of thoughts that your average Joe has on a day-to-day basis. And it was quite interesting. But we've other than Sasha, we've interviewed a lot of players today. We've seen the likes of Alexandra Ayala, we've seen Yannick Sinner, Taylor Fritz. Petra Kvitova had her last ever match here at Wimbledon. We spoke to Jack Draper. Coco Gauff and Novak Djokovic will be later, but you guys can check out the Instagram and the YouTube channel to see if we get any questions in with them. What was your favorite interview of the day so far?
Yeah, for me, my favorite interview was unequivocally Mira Andreeva.
Mm-hmm.
Mira Andreeva was very what's the word, bubbly. She
Okay.
had a very bubbly
Yeah.
personality, and I got to ask her a question about what she said after winning Indian Wells earlier this year. She said that she watched a LeBron James interview and that it inspired her her mental prowess to overtake the physical suffering that she might feel on the court to try to figure it out anyway, because she knows mentally she can be there even physically her body is not. And she said that I asked her, do you ever get inspiration from sporting greats? And look at, I think there's a certain pursuit for greatness one can have, whether it's sporting greats or other greats. And I asked her, do you ever look at quotes from people who have done amazing things, because you seem to be quite ambitious, and mentioned the LeBron James thing. And she said that she actually has a notebook of quotes from different sporting legends that she goes to. But what was the most interesting thing to me actually was the fact that she said that she knows there will be times where she might be disappointed with herself or angry with herself, and she might need a little bit extra. So the word need there was a bit interesting to me. I think she said need it. Which is quite interesting to me, because she feels like not only is this a good thing to have, it's actually a big factor as to her getting wins, which I think is quite interesting. And yeah, she says that having the quotes in her notebook is great, and she said that she'll share the notebook if she wins the title. I think she said at the end, or something along those lines.
Share it to you or share it to everyone?
Share it to everybody. I'm not that much in cahoots with Andreeva yet. I've had one interview, but
I mean, if she shares it to you, you can probably sell it on for quite a bit, or maybe use it yourself. You get when you get on the tennis court when you go back to the States.
No, it's funny you say that, because the reason I asked the question is because actually her saying that about LeBron James inspired me when I was playing a match once. I was physically about to throw up in my city playoffs. I was 2 points away from losing, and then I found a way to win the match. And I was thinking of Mira saying that, so I was like, it actually inspired me when I was playing. But
you missed 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah, exactly.
That's definitely one of the quotes.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, it was cool to see that Mira is, and on this high of a level, is inspired by legends like that as well. So
it's I think the more inspiration you can take from your peers who have been there and done that before, but also from other sports is great.
Yeah.
And we had a couple matches. We obviously spoke about the Zverev thought process coming into after his loss, and Rinderknecht played lights out tennis, as he said, but we also had another match that had to sort of be finished today. That was from yesterday, and we were speaking about this yesterday on the podcast briefly. Taylor Fritz against Mpechi Pericard. Yesterday the match got postponed at 10:15. Curfew's at 11. So you've got 45 minutes. If you say, oh well, by the time they were off court it was 10:20 or something like that. But anyway, you got 45 minutes of play that you could still have done. They come back on court today, fifth set, 35 minutes. What's your thoughts there? Because I'll give mine, and I just find it completely. I just find it completely unreasonable that matches like that. If you've got 45 minutes and you're going into a fifth, you might as well give it a shot. You never know. We're not talking about clay here, where a set can last 90 minutes. We're talking about grass court with two massive servers, which I watched 3 minutes, literally 3 or 4 minutes of that match between interviews today, and that was the start of the fifth. I put my head down to send you a text message. By the time I put my head up, it's 1-1. And by the time I've left the stadium, it's 2-1. It goes so quick.
Yeah.
It's and Taylor was a bit salty. Well, not salty. I think that's the wrong word. He was a bit, he didn't want to blame Giovanni, but he also did sort of blame him on social media, saying, I was willing to continue playing yesterday. The referee came to ask us. I said, I'm ready to play. Giovanni said, no, it's too late, etc., etc. So then I asked Taylor, I was like, would you rather have a curfew and, have to come and play a fifth set the next day? Or would you rather, the potential of a match having to go until 2-3 a.m.? Obviously, it wouldn't have happened yesterday, even if they did play on, because the timings weren't like that. But, in the US Open and at the Australian Open, you get that quite often. It's like, would you prefer a match to go to 2-3 a.m. and have that sort of issue of, having to stay up late and recover and do media at 3 in the morning and etc. etc. He's like, I'd still prefer doing that than playing a final set the next day, because then I just can't switch off mentally a little bit. He said he went to bed still sort of in the zone, focused on the Rinderknecht match, whilst when he finishes a match in a day, or even if it's really late, he can go to bed and then start thinking about the next match the next day, once he's sort of finding his rhythm going into practice. So yeah, it's been a bit of a an interesting discussion of his thoughts there.
Tennis is so important, the rhythm and momentum of things. So to cut off your rhythm completely, I understand where Taylor is coming from. Obviously, this is just him saying that he would rather play till 2 or 3 a.m. Actually doing so is a different thing.
Yeah.
Which is probably important to mention, honestly, because you never know exactly what he really means, which is completely understandable, and maybe he does mean that. But I think obviously there's a middle ground that can be had there, where you don't have to play till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, but you also, finish at 11 o'clock, midnight, maybe 12:30 at the latest, and then you go home. I think that's pretty reasonable. Yesterday was unreasonable. From an outsider's point of view, it almost seemed like the decision could have been made based on wanting more entertainment, or in to keep the crowd on their toes, or the audience on their toes, as to who's going to win, because it seemed like Fritz had completely stolen the momentum, and that Impechi Pericard was potentially quite tired while Fritz was full of adrenaline, so it seemed quite obvious that Fritz was about to win. There wasn't that much way you can reason to stop the match at that point. And yeah, the sets are incredibly fast. We're not playing, Munar versus Batista Agut here. This is two big servers, and we need to be a little bit more fair, I think, to the players in general. Yeah.
No, I was going to stop you there. Sorry, I thought I looked at you and you sort of looked at me like, "Whoa, what are you doing here, Liam?" I was like, when you mentioned Munar, I wanted to say, Munar did big things today.
That is true.
He did big things.
Yes, he beat Bublik.
And he beat Bublik, and you were in the room with Bublik right after the loss.
Yep.
Basically, the only English questions were from you. What was your how was he feeling in terms of post loss?
He was pissed. He was upset.
Pissed or sad?
He was pissed, I think. That was the feeling that I got. He was nice enough with the journalists, but he was also quite forward and didn't feel much like talking, which I understand. He was serving for the fourth set against Munar, and it was 5-5 in the fourth set tiebreak. So once that slipped away from him, we were watching the fifth set. To me, it felt like he was missing a lot of shots and finishing points off early that he just had no right to miss. So it feels like mentally probably was shut off at that point a little bit. Bublik was supposed to be one of the top, at the very least you would say top 15, but many would even say top 10 or even top 5 is quite logical as well. Contenders, at least top 10 for the title. So it's a bit disappointing to see that from Bublik, especially against Munar, who he pushed Alcaraz a few weeks ago. And I feel like Munar is probably starting to be a little bit underrated in terms of the level of tennis that he can produce, but that's not a match that you want to see a potentially top 10 title contender lose in the first round.
Yeah, I think it's one of those matches which really just, he knows that it was on his racket realistically more than anything. And
yes, he said that as well, actually.
Yeah, it's one of those matches. But Munar did, as you said, push Alcaraz to 3.5 hours on grass.
That's true.
Fabio Fognini pushed Alcaraz to 4+ hours, but it's but it's one of those things where it's like how much expectations you have of your opponent coming into one of those matches. I think it's one of those where you can't really say Munar didn't deserve to win because Munar, he's a very, very big fighter. We listen, guys, we've had so many interviews today that have been incredible, and we upload them throughout the day and also at the end of the day onto the channel and the Instagram and TikTok. So please make sure to check those out. Before we go, tomorrow we have some really good matchups. We've got Francis Tiafoe against Cam Norrie. We've got Taylor Fritz against Diallo, which, I would say is an underrated match. Sabalenka against Buskova. You got Rublev against Harris. I mean, these sorts of matches that you don't really think of too much. Maybe Fonseca against Brooksby. I mean, Greeksport had to withdraw from the tournament due to injury, so Brooksby's into the second round. What are your thoughts? If I have to say, actually, let me add one more to it. Felix Auger-Aliassime against Jan-Lennard Struff. If I have to say, just give me one match that you're looking for tomorrow, what is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Auger-Aliassime versus Struff is an interesting one. Just because they're both, I think, good grass court players, but Auger-Aliassime has lost in the first round both the last 2 years here. So that one is interesting to me. But I think the one that stands out to me is, I mean, she's always chosen for popcorn, and she rarely wins the match. But I just want to say Raducanu versus Vondrousova, I think, is quite good.
Yeah.
Vondrousova is on a good run. Obviously, she won the title a couple years ago, or last year, actually.
Yeah.
Last year. Vondrousova
No,
took the title.
Vondrousova won 2 years ago.
Oh, is it 2 years ago?
Yes.
So, yes, that's right. So, that could be an interesting one because I feel like they're both quite good on grass. And then, yeah, in terms of the men, I would say probably...
Oh, no, I asked for one match.
Oh, okay, there you go.
I asked for one match.
Yeah, Raducanu.
So,
Raducanu
okay, you went with the women. That's fine. I was gonna also go with a women's match. I was gonna go with the Sabalenka Buskova because Buskova, is very good. But in terms of the men's, I'm really, really looking forward to seeing Rublev against Harris, because I think Harris can play very well on his day. Rublev, lost in the first round here last year, said he doesn't have any expectations when I interviewed him yesterday for his tournament here because he's already done better than last year. So I think that will be my pick. Guys, we have to run to some more press conferences, so we've got still to do. There's a lot to do here. These days are long at Wimbledon.
Yeah, exactly. We have Coco and Novak still to do.
So, guys, please make sure to check out the additional content we post on the channel. And I just wanted to make sure, you guys are up to date with the fact that we post these daily and we post during the day the interviews, the audio clips. So please make sure to check that out. And if you have any questions or any thoughts, leave a comment and let us know. But with that, thank you guys, and we'll speak to you again tomorrow night.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.